While Glaspell has secured a place in the critical history of American theater, her work as a novelist has not received such widespread recognition. Indeed, this edition of Fidelity is the first critical, annotated edition of any of Glaspell's novels. Yet Glaspell always considered herself, primarily, a novelist. In her biography of her late husband, The Road to the Temple, she recounted her abrupt debut as a playwright at Cook's command, being forced to pen her first and most enduring play, Trifles, after he had announced to his theatrical company that his wife would provide them with their newest production. "I had meant to do it as a short story," Glaspell recalled, but the stage took it for its own. That Glaspell later, her obligation to Cook fulfilled, still pursued her initial vision for the story of the Hossick murders, turning it into a short story suggests that fiction was indeed her ideal form. What's more, Glaspell's fiction was, for the most part, very well received upon its publication, and her novels were regularly reviewed favorably in the major periodicals of the day, even appearing on the New York Times bestseller lists. What happened, scholar Martha Carpentier asks, to demote Susan Glaspell from the widely respected novelist who vied with Ernest Hemingway on the bestseller lists of 1929 to a has-been whose publisher felt justified in donating the metal plates of her books to the war effort in 1941. Carpentier largely points to shifting literary aesthetic tastes between the First and Second World Wars, a period that saw an increasing nationalism and along with it a privileging of the masculine views with the views of masculine culture. This led many women writers to be dismissed as sentimental and thus not to be taken seriously. Yet as Carpentier explains, Glaspell's novels, quote, remain a buried treasure, a rich vein of unmined literary wealth, end quote. The introduction to Carpentier's major novels of Susan Glaspell is the most extended and most effective argument for the importance and relevance of Glaspell's fiction, and her novels in particular. Perhaps most importantly, Carpentier convincingly argues that Glaspell's novels are frequently just as daring, both formally and thematically, as her much-lauded drama. And it is notable that Carpentier chooses to begin her treatment of Glaspell's novels with Fidelity, the writer's third novel, and the one in which Carpentier argues that Glaspell is first, quote, able to meld her inheritance of fictional realism with the expressionistic playwriting techniques she had learned, techniques such as scenes that begin in media res, extensive dialogue with little exposition, and chronological reversals and flashbacks to create the interplay of past and present so necessary to her concern with psychological exploration, end quote. Fidelity is therefore a crucial work in Glaspell's oeuvre. The writing of it allowed her to explore and critique the culture and the cultural values with which she had to contend in her own unconventional early life, while offering a timeless story of self-discovery. Glaspell has been celebrated in her time and our own for her ability to see and express the innate value in the seemingly mundane aspects of the lives of women, the treasures among the so-called trifles, that had to that point gone largely unexpressed in literature. And what better way to offer such a provocation and critique than on the stage of the often dismissed regional romance? Fidelity's being lost to time in itself demonstrates the novel's importance and deepens the meaningfulness of Ruth's quest to forge a lasting identity for herself in a world that seems pitted against her. As gender inequalities motivated the critical rejection of Glaspell's, quote, sentimental style and experimental structure of her work, there is an irony in the very features that limited Fidelity's exposure being part of what makes the work so important. Late in the novel, Ruth Holland comes to the realization that one's past failures need not be viewed as such, and what has happened in the past has value primarily in what it contributes to the future. It is a profound reminder that the past neglect of Susan Glaspell's Fidelity need not determine the work's future. As with Ruth, it is time to move on, for Fidelity has much to teach, and we so much to learn.